Hey everybody, it is IVF update time. So I think the last time that I posted a video, it was stimulation time. And that was Mr. Booth giving me my injections. And so that lasted for a little bit longer than anticipated, only because my doctor really wanted to push me as much as possible in a safe way to ensure we got the most amount of follicles or eggs out of the process. So I think as far as the stimulation portion goes, me tolerating the medication, I think it went relatively well. Two of the things that stick out to me, one was the medication or the injection used to prevent me from ovulating and doing all of this for nothing. That medication made me nauseous, and I just didn't want to eat or didn't feel good after that medication, and that was every day up until the trigger day. But the biggest thing I do agree with is that it's the just feeling uncomfortable because you are basically stimulating your ovaries to make way more eggs than it should. And so I think I posted a picture where my stomach looked a little bit bigger. And yeah, I was starting to feel it towards the end of the process, especially because we went a little bit further than the typical, I believe, 10 to 12 days. So by the end of it, I was driving, because I do a lot of driving for work. I was driving around town with the lap band pulled away from my stomach just because it hurt so, well, it didn't hurt, but it was just uncomfortable to have something pressed up against your stomach. So I think that went really well. Lewis was an awesome IVF nurse, or I shouldn't say IVF nurse, but stimulation trigger, whatever nurse, because he gave me my injections like a champ. He was really, really supportive with that. He would stop whatever he was doing when it was time, because it was based on time. You had to do it at a certain range. He would come in and do them for me. So that was really helpful. So yeah, we went through the stimulation, and then it was time for retrieval day. And we were both, well, I was nervous and excited. He was just more, let's get it done. And so we went into the surgery center. We had to be there bright and early. And so we live in Rosenberg, and not that I have any point of reference, but we had to drive to Clear Lake, and that's about a little over an hour away. And we had to be at the surgery clinic for 6:30 in the morning on a Saturday. So luckily there was no traffic, but yeah, we had to be there super early. My doctor wasn't available this weekend, so one of her colleagues stepped in, but everybody was really amazing. The process went smoothly, no issues whatsoever. But after the retrieval, I remember waking up from the anesthesia and the recovery nurse telling me, yay, we got 9 eggs. And I started crying immediately. So it was a situation of your expectations just not being met. There are different theories or schools of thought as to how many, not embryos, how many eggs is a good number to get. And so I stopped watching YouTube videos maybe like a couple of days before the retrieval, because I was just getting too wound up. But some people were getting 30 eggs, some people were getting 20 something eggs. And from what I was reading, a good goal is between 8 and 15. And I think me wanting to be the overachiever, I wanted 15 to 20 eggs because I had so many follicles, and I was like, the math isn't adding up. But basically, your follicles don't always equal having an egg in them. So that's one thing. But also, that's just the number we got. So I took some time to feel that, because, like I said, I was disappointed. And IVF isn't just about the injections and all of the waiting. It's really emotional when you think about it. So I took that day and the next day to kind of process and deal with my disappointment, because I don't think you should just, for me, it's not healthy to just say, oh, it'll be okay and just get over it. That's just not how I operate. So I took some time to feel my disappointment, but I was still grateful, because there are some couples that go through this process and don't end up with anything. So um, by the end of it, I was perfectly fine. We had 9 eggs. And so after surgery, or after the retrieval, I should say, it was just such a blessing to have my mom here. She was in the last video that I posted. Lewis is great. He's always taking care of me, but it's nothing like having your mom here to really do all of the things that a mom can do. So after surgery, they tell you to advance your diet as tolerated, drink a ton of fluid, including Gatorade or Powerade, and protein. Like they wanted me some just large number of grams of protein, and specifically Gatorade, because of the electrolyte disturbance that your body goes through with the retrieval process. So I was drinking like 4 to 5 bottles of Powerade, and I tried those nasty protein bars. They were gross, couldn't do it. So I was like, just give me some regular food. And by regular food, I mean the all-star meal at Waffle House. So I had the waffle, the steak, the eggs, the grits, the hash browns, and the toast. And I smashed it all and I went to sleep. And so fast forward a little bit, after they retrieve the eggs, they then will call you periodically throughout the week to tell you how your basically embryos are growing, because after they retrieve the eggs, they clean them up and they look at them to see, you know, make sure they're nice, viable eggs. And then they put the sperm, the eggs together, and they do their thing and they start to grow and multiply. And they tell you, okay, the next day you should have 4 cell divisions, and then you have 8, and then you have 10. And so they call you every morning, like super early, and tell you your process, or how the process is going, I should say. And I never answered the phone. I just let it go to voicemail. I knew it was them calling me, but I just didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to listen to the voicemail when I was ready to. So from the 9 eggs, eventually we had 5 embryos. And so that is the sperm and the egg together making a little baby in the petri dish. And so we had 5. And that was expected, like I said, but you know, still, you're like, okay, all 5, y'all need to hang in there. Y'all are booths, y'all can do this. And so by the end of the week, we actually ended up with 3. And once again, slightly less disappointed, because really people do go through all of this and spend all of this money and end up with none. So I realize how fortunate we are and how grateful we are to have 3. And so we elected to do the genetic testing on the embryos because for several reasons. One, you're spending all this money and you have it as an option. For us, we felt like it was worth it because you want to lessen your chance of an abnormal embryo being put in you, because usually that either it's going to be a miscarriage, possibly, because it's a higher risk of that, or, you know, having a child born with challenges. And so we felt it was important for us to do that. And also, I'm considered advanced maternal age. I know I look young, but I'm 37 years old. And so anything after 35 is considered advanced maternal age. And so because you don't foresee yourself doing this a billion times, you just want to be as strategic as possible. So we did the genetic testing, and that also allows us to know the sex of the baby or the babies, potentially. So we ended up with 3, and we saw our doctor on Friday to go over the genetic testing results. But I had already heard from the lab the day before, because I don't like surprises really. So she told us that we had 2 embryos that survived. One of them was genetically abnormal. It had too many chromosomes and some other genetic issues. So unfortunately, we had to discard that one. And I hate saying discard because it's like something you throw away, but it's just not a viable option. And so We did have to sign paperwork for that, but we have 2 embryos, and I'm just thrilled. You come to a point where you are just grateful for everything that you get through this process. And so the next step traditionally would be for the implantation once your hormone levels have dropped to an acceptable level and all that kind of stuff. But Kristen has to be extra. So I have a polyp in my uterus, and the doctor wants to have a nice, clean uterus, well shaped and pretty, as she calls it. So she will be going in on this Wednesday, and we will have the surgery to clean out the uterus and make sure everything is as pristine as she would like it. And she's also going to do a HSG, hysterosalpingography. And that's basically where they go in and they look at your fallopian tubes. So you have your ovaries, your fallopian tubes, and then your uterus. And she wants to make sure that the fallopian tubes are nice and wide open, like a clear highway. And this will be my 3rd one. So basically, because your ovaries use the fallopian tubes to carry the little egg down every month and all of that kind of stuff, they want to make sure that there's no blockage, and also that there's no fluid collecting in the fallopian tubes, because with the latter, the fallopian tubes being filled with fluid, that fluid can be toxic to an embryo, or it can regurgitate back into the uterus and wash out the embryo. Like, you know, that fluid just comes in like you flush in a toilet, and everything in there just goes with it. So she wants to make sure that the fallopian tubes will not be an issue when it's time to put in the embryo. So definitely appreciate that. There is a chance that she may have to do some laparoscopic work, and that's basically where they go in through the abdomen. They create little slits, and they kind of come from above instead of inside. And that will be my 2nd laparoscopic procedure if she has to do it. That's not guaranteed, but that is something that is on the table. And there's also a possibility that if she does see something that she doesn't like, or that could be more troublesome to us putting the embryo into my uterus, she will take out my fallopian tubes, which is totally fine with me, as long as there is no circulatory or blood flow issue to the ovaries. That is something that I'm okay with, because I do plan on getting a full hysterectomy once that last kid comes out, because I have endometriosis and my cycles are not fun. I mean, they are terrible, like bad. This last one was horrible. So that is something that I've dealt with for many, many years. And PSA, your cycle should not hurt. It should not be painful. It should not be debilitating. So if it is, please go get checked out. Yeah, so that's kind of where we are. We will do surgery this Wednesday, and then I will recover, and 2 weeks later we will hopefully do the transfer of an embryo. And so then after that, you wait 2 more weeks to see if the embryo took and you're pregnant, and that's called the 2-week wait. And I'm going to try to stay as busy as possible, because I want good energy, positive vibes. I suffer from anxiety already, so I'm just gonna have to really dial into that self-care, and honestly just leaving it in God's hands, because that's the ultimate, way to go. Because at the end of the day, it's His timing, and it's His word, and it's His process, and He has us throughout this whole thing. So that's what we're gonna do.